Hey guys, it's been about 3 weeks since I started doing the YouTube series on like all the programming challenges and whatnot. And I honestly thought that now would probably be a good time to check in and just like let you guys know what's happened and how things are going. And this is kind of off like completely unscripted and just off the top of my head. Um, so when I very first started this channel, the very first video that I made went so terribly as far as like my ability to program went that I almost didn't even post it. If you guys look at the very first video in the series, you'll notice I was very embarrassed. I was very upset with how I performed, and truthfully, it was bad. I performed terribly, and we are 3 weeks in. I've got about 50 problems done in that time, and hi Lobes, and since then, the very last problem that I completed, it'll be the last video that I've posted. I'll probably yeah, this video will come directly after the one that I'm talking about. I completed the array manipulation challenge from HackerRank. It was a hard problem for an intermediate level problem solver, basically, and really that's a pretty big achievement. And I had no problem with it. It only took me like off screen it was about 50 minutes, and then the video itself is like 26 or something. So yeah, I was absolutely cooking. And I mean, I hit everything. Like all almost all of my intuition was on point. But I guess I'm trying to say is that what I'm trying to say is that my intuition has grown tremendously. I can very much look at a problem now and pretty well figure out the direction that it needs to go in a short amount of time. That is, unless there's sometimes I'll miss like hidden complexities, like little nuances to problems that you don't catch at the beginning that really throw everything off, or I'll venture down a wrong path. Stuff happens. But overall, my intuition's like pretty good. Um, and then the other thing is, I think at this point, my intuition is like really good to the point that I think I should probably start focusing on still solving these competitive programming challenges, but moving towards really chasing knowledge rather than intuition. Because I mean, everybody knows it, but it's like the two different forms of intelligence. You have like your knowledge and your intuition, right? I guess there's probably like reasoning and logic and whatever, but point being is that when it comes to these problems, you rely pretty heavily on intuition, and then you have to have the abilities um, to implement. And I think that the ability to implement partially comes from knowledge to a larger degree. And of course, like so, what I'm talking about is I don't have a lot of experience with like heaps, and I don't have a lot of experience with just data structures in general. Some algorithms like greedy search, dynamic programming is a complete black box mystery to me. And I think that it's probably time that I start tackling challenges like that where I'm going to learn something every time, because at the end of each video I've tried to like look at them and say what have I learned. And it sounds arrogant, and it's but like most problems that I go through I can't say that I've learned anything. Like sure, I might have solved a complex puzzle and I might have improved my ability to like reason through things and use my intuition, but like I most of the time I didn't learn something I didn't know before. I didn't learn what a heap was, a stack was. I didn't learn how to do a dynamic programming challenge. It's really that's where I'm lacking. So that's where we're gonna start moving from here on out. I guess another thing to talk about is like very briefly is that I've done probably a little over 100 programming challenges if I had to guess. I did like the whole month preparation thing, which I think had like 30 questions. I did like a week preparation, which had like 10 or 15 or something. And then I've just been blowing through questions in for this series. And I definitely like it, I am considered a smart person, air quotes, okay? Intelligence is hard to quantify, whatever. I'm considered a smart person, and these challenges have made me question my abilities to program again and again. They they honestly hurt because it's almost pure. pure intelligence that you're using to solve these. But I don't want you guys to like get discouraged because I really want you to look at the fact that I was 50 questions in at least when I started the series. My first video, I almost didn't publish it because I was that embarrassed. It was that bad. And in like 50 questions, I've built, well, another 50 questions. So like I'm at 100 and I've built a pretty good intuition, but it's not been easy. Like I've basically sat here and grinded out these questions all day, every day. And uh, it's after 3 weeks that I'm really starting to like have any amount of confidence in completing them. Like solving these problems does not require just pure intelligence. It requires a little bit of luck because when you're looking at these questions, yes, intuition is going to help you choose the path that you should go down. But, you know, think of it this way. When you look at one of these problems, the ways that you could try to go about solving it are at a huge broad spectrum, right? Like there's probably 1,000 different routes that you could take. And as you like start thinking through the problem and you start considering things, you work to narrow down these problems until you get to a couple of different paths that you think could theoretically solve the problem, right? And no matter how much you narrow it down, it's very possible that you're not going to be able to see the solution before you solve the problem. And so you're going to travel down the wrong paths. Perspective is a big one. There's a video that I published where um, somewhere in my calculations, I made a tiny little error in my arithmetic, right? It was just basic math that I accidentally messed up. And that little error made me see the problem in the complete wrong way. And it basically led me to like an hour of just sitting there writing down math. And I came to a solution that worked, but it wasn't as efficient. And um, it was like obvious. Once it gave me the solution, I looked at it. I'm like, wait a minute, why didn't I see this? And then as I was editing the video, I saw like, oh crap, I just made a basic error in my arithmetic that basically made the pattern not exist. And it's things like that, things that'll throw you off, having just slightly off perspective, missing a tiny detail. Um, so don't be discouraged if you guys are struggling. I guess obviously I'm doing this to get a job, and as far as that's going, I haven't started applying to jobs again yet, but I think in probably the next 2 weeks that I will. I feel very ready. I think that if as long as I go and develop some hard knowledge of things like heaps, stacks, DQs, and dynamic programming, that they couldn't throw something at me that I couldn't solve at this point. But I will say there's definitely problems. Like I did a competitive programming challenge, like an actual competition against people and shit, and they threw a dynamic programming challenge at me. I don't know what kind of genius you have to be able to solve a dynamic programming challenge like right off the fucking top of your head without ever have seen one before. But I know that I was not that genius because they threw a thing where you have a grid and you're supposed to find like the largest area or something of like adjacent like rectangular elements or something. Like you have to find the largest area of the rectangle out of like a n by n matrix of elements. And that was like impossible for me. So it was definitely nice though to see that I was lacking. But I will say this too is that every time I feel confident, I know that I should probably stop feeling confident because it's normally when you feel confident that you learn something that you didn't know that makes you realize like, oh, I have no idea what I'm doing. Like back when I was beginning my journey as a programmer when I was like what 11, 12 years old, um I think by the time I was like 12 and a half, 13, maybe 14, I thought I knew a lot. And then I got to high school, I built the autonomous car, and I went and took that internship for web development and got some certs and built a website. I was like, I know a lot. And like but it's just like every time I think I know something I realize that I don't. And so I've definitely developed like a a mentality of humility because I know at any point I'm going to be humbled. Another thing I guess is that I can switch between JavaScript and Python pretty fluently. Like I definitely like switching from one language to another. I need a second to get the ball rolling. I'll like start using syntax from like the other language. But I can very much fluidly switch between Python and JavaScript now, and well, TypeScript as well. TypeScript has gotten a lot better for me, but I will say this is that using TypeScript in context of things like HackerRank is not at all the same as something like an API and formatting data that way. Like you don't ever use interfaces programming TypeScript in HackerRank, but you very much do in like API style stuff. JavaScript is kind of crazy too, man, because like you don't even have a built-in sum function. Like you can just pass an iterable to a sum function in Python. My nose is like really sorry. I'm sorry for like this nasally ass talking. My nose is stuffed. I'm sick. I actually threw up the other day. But there's not even a built-in sum function in JavaScript. You literally have to use reduce, a lambda function, and like actually code that shit out. It's kind of crazy. Oh, here's something you guys might appreciate. TypeScript in HackerRank is pretty much useless, although it is slightly beneficial to learn how to like initialize dictionaries and sets in TypeScript. But like otherwise, the basic typing is like literally so simple. Like you'll encounter strings, numbers, booleans, sets, dictionaries. But like once you get past that, HackerRank does not offer much practice as far as TypeScript goes. You're definitely way better off trying to practice typing API data. So this is slightly unrelated because I haven't really posted videos of this, but off screen I've been practicing with some regex and MySQL. I think they're both pretty good skills to have, especially since at any point you could encounter regex patterns in like an interview setting. So I think it's a very good skill to have, and I talked to ChatGPT, and I don't really have anybody else to talk to, but I talked to ChatGPT, and it said that regex patterns probably aren't going anywhere for a while, so probably a good skill to pick up. And then as far as the SQL thing goes, SQL, from what I can tell, is like Dr. Seuss, but from what I can tell, it's very like one size fits all or universal. Yes, it's like a universal language. You can apply it to like many databases, and so I would definitely say it's worth the learn. Like I built Cloudimate and I had to like set up the databases and whatnot, but mostly I was just asking ChatGPT like, hey, I need these columns. Can you format it? Or I would find patterns in the output that it gave me, and then I would just like manipulate it myself from there. But it's definitely been nice being able to work with at MySQL. Well, not MySQL, SQL in general. And I guess that makes me think about the fact that I probably should work to do more time challenges or compete more often because it's definitely not the same like in an unpressured environment where I'm just sitting here talking to myself completely alone and like there's not a timer on me or anything. Um, it's not going to be the same as an interview setting. So I definitely need to practice working under pressure still. I'm going to cut it off here. Oh my god. I just had the worst fumble. All right. Catch you guys later.